Okay, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about the costume design in 3 Wes Anderson films, The Royal Tenenbaums, Moonrise Kingdom, and The Grand Budapest Hotel. The costume design in these films is not only immaculate and visually stunning, but they also give important insight to the characters and the themes of the movies. So without further ado, let's get started. Royal Tenenbaum and his wife Ethelene had 3 children, Chaz, Margot, and Richie. All 3 children were prodigies. However, as they become adults, all the kids succumb to failure and disaster. 22 years after getting separated and moving out, now broke and homeless, Royal fakes terminal stomach cancer to win back his wife and children. The family congregates back to the house they all grew up in and confront their baggage. Clothing is one of the easiest ways to depict character. The way someone dresses, styles their hair, puts on makeup, just says a lot about them, as it does for someone in real life. Wearing the same outfits in childhood and in adulthood is one of the easiest ways to show arrested development in film. We see this very clearly with Margot Tenenbaum, who wears the same exact outfit she wore as a child. Margot wears a luxurious, vintage-looking trench-style mink coat, dark brown loafers, and a Birkin bag. Lacoste provided the fabric and the alligator logo for Patch to make the 2-striped tennis dresses that Margot wears underneath, as Lacoste did not make striped dresses at the time. On its own, Margot's outfit portrays a rebellious rich girl. The fur coat, loafers, and Birkin signify wealth, but she also wears smudged black eyeliner and a hair clip to signify youthful rebellion. The tennis dresses she wears also emphasize her posh upbringing, regularly going to country clubs. However, the silhouette is tight and figure-hugging, showing us once again that there is this undertone of provocativeness. The tennis dresses also draw a subtle visual connection to Richie, who we later find out plays a romantic interest. The fact that she wears the same outfit that she did as a 12-year-old shows that this is the age that she's peaked. When we see her for the first time as an adult, she's already deep in her slump, spending hours in the bathtub watching TV. She was a gifted child that is burnt out and become disillusioned with adulthood. Kinda same. As for Richie, he is a fallen pro tennis player whose career flopped after a meltdown on the court, a meltdown triggered by Margot's new marriage. He continues to wear aspects of his tennis uniform, such as shirts, shoes, and a sweatband to show that he is still clinging on to his previous success. Patch also said that his design is a nod to Bjorn Borg, a famous tennis player in the 70s. He's, to put it simply, static in his life, unable to let go of his career or Margot. He tries to go away for a year to forget about her, but visually we can see there is no change in his costume and therefore no change in his mindset. Richie also wears large sunglasses and dons a beard to hide his true self from the outside world, and this true self is the one that loves Margot. Shaving his beard during this scene shows him coming to terms with reality. By changing his appearance, he's trying to let go of his past self, aka let go of Margot. He attempts suicide because he realizes that his hair is not just an appearance factor, but a cover-up, and when facing his true self, he realizes he's unable to let go of Margot. Chaz has less of an obvious arrested development, wearing a completely different outfit than he wore at his prime. His nervous breakdown is the result of losing his wife in a plane crash. However, when we look back at his childhood, we can see how his father stealing from him and breaking game rules to shoot his own son has heightened his paranoia and need for control. He famously wears a fire engine red Adidas tracksuit and matches with his 2 sons who've come to look like mini versions of himself. This matching is done to indicate his controlling neurotic behavior, as well as his stress to create his own safe family, having been neglected by his father who's always preferred Richie. The bright red he wears symbolizes his high alertness and paranoia, and of course he wears a tracksuit for easier mobility in case of emergency. So, seeing how all these costumes represent an arrested development, it's understandable why some of us would ask, why do these characters wear the same exact costumes at the end? Do they not grow throughout the course of the movie? And my interpretation of this film is that the children are not supposed to succeed. And they don't. They don't succeed in a very traditional way. They don't overcome any specific hurdles in their career. They just learn to carry on. Chaz seems to have relaxed a little bit, but that doesn't erase the neglect and manipulation he felt as a child, nor the fact his wife and now his father are still gone. Although Richie's finally voiced his feelings, there's not much he and Margot can do without being frowned upon by society. He also doesn't go pro again, but instead moves on with his life through teaching tennis. And Margot, who's finally written a play, doesn't gain any renewed fame or glowing reviews that incite a new blossoming career. She also claims she's trying to quit smoking at her mother's wedding, but we see her smoking again later. I think the point of the movie is not about the actual accomplishments or necessarily overcoming and succeeding in a traditional American dream kind of way, but just emphasizing the importance of family and the importance of your family helping you through the ups and downs of your life and your ability to just carry on. Set on an island off the coast of New England called New Penzance in 1965, 12-year-old Sam and Susie have fallen in love and decide to run away. Sam is an orphan and a social outcast, described as emotionally disturbed by his foster parents and peers. Susie is described as a troubled child by her parents and is prone to aggressive outbursts. A violent storm is approaching the island, so a desperate search party sets out for them. Susie Bishop wears a mauve dress with a Peter Pan collar, and she wears knee-high socks and saddle shoes. Just a bit of fashion history trivia, because we all love that. Mod comes from younger people, like the mod style. And in the 1960s, there was actually a phenomenon called the youth quake, which basically described the whole phenomenon of the fashion industry moving away from taking inspiration from couture houses to taking inspiration from younger people. Also, even though saddle shoes peaked in the 1950s, a bunch of schools still continued to make saddle shoes part of their dress code up until the 1990s. So Susie's costume is pretty accurate. The khaki scout costumes are clearly based on 1960s Boy Scout uniforms as well, so Sam's outfit is also pretty accurate. Susie wears pink for the majority of the movie. Pink symbolizes youth and romance, so this color reading gives us insight to her true character. What Susie's parents and adults believe is that she is a troubled child, and her finding their book, Coping with the Very Troubled Child, is a major reason for her wanting to run away. Susie also stabs a khaki scout with scissors, and the adults simplify her action as just being the actions of an aggressive child. However, through her pink clothing, it is coded that beneath Susie's seemingly misguided, tough exterior, she really is just a sweet and romantic girl at heart. By the end of the movie, it's a little bit unclear about what happens to Sam and Susie. The narrator tells us that the final scene happens 1 year after the main events of the film. We know Sam is still living with Captain Sharp because he wears a mini version of Sharp's police uniform. We also assume Susie's parents are doing better because they call Susie down for a family dinner, which implies that the parents are being less neglectful towards each other and their kids. This heavily contrasts the beginning sequences, which show everyone in the Bishop household left to their own devices, and even Susie's brothers are depicted eating by themselves. Even though the film never explicitly says so, we can assume Susie's bad behavior stemmed from her parents' marital issues and their neglect for their children. We also see Susie wearing a yellow dress in the final frames. This is the first time Susie wears yellow. Yellow is used predominantly in this film to represent youth and security and warmth. Many significant objects in this film are yellow, including Susie's suitcase, Sam's tent, and the khaki scout neckerchief, all of which evoke or carry these connotations. For example, when Sam hurts Susie's feelings, he offers his neckerchief as an apology to wipe away her tears and to restore their friendship. Having Susie wear yellow is a wonderful way to tell the audience that she's doing all right. In contrast to yellow, the film uses deep blue to symbolize danger. Most notable is when Sam and Susie almost commit suicide, jumping off the bell tower scene in the middle of a storm. We can see that carrying over to costume design with Social Services costume. Social Services, yes, that is her name, wears a blue almost identical to the danger-coded blue to represent how she is the villain in this movie, and her intentions to put Sam through electroshock therapy and eventually into juvenile refuge are dangerous and do not prioritize his well-being. It's pretty clear that the narrative pushes an anti-institutional stance through color coding, but also by the fact that the character is dehumanized by not having a real name. The Grand Budapest Hotel is a popular European ski resort for the rich and elite. Mostly set in the 1930s on the edge of World War II, Monsieur Gustave is the hotel concierge, and Zero is the junior lobby boy who quickly becomes Gustave's protege. Gustave runs a tight ship, taking service very seriously, and even takes on many of the elderly female guests as lovers. When one of them, Madame D, mysteriously dies, Gustave is framed for the murder. The movie is for the most part narrated by Zero and takes the form of a flashback. The hotel is located in Dubrovka, a fictional European republic. Gustav wears a purple tailcoat with notched lapels and a red bow tie. He's extremely prim, proper, polished, pristine, and purple. The deep purple he wears, and technically what all the hotel employees wear, serve to emphasize the regality of the hotel. Purple has always been connotated with luxury and grandeur, both of which are associated with the Grand Budapest. Gustav also wears the emblem of the Society of the Cross Keys, which is an international network of concierges and high-class hotels that assist each other. This is based on the real-life Society of Golden Keys, which still exists today. The Society of Golden Keys was established in Paris in 1929, but it wasn't until 1953 that they adopted a badge, and not until 1998 that Boucher produced the official version we see today. The Golden Keys insignia is very, very similar to the one we see in the movie, and they actually endorse this recreation. To be a member is an honor and the results of a pretty selective process, so the fact that Gustav is wearing one definitely adds to his prestige, but also alludes to his innocence. Zero wears a similar uniform, though his looks cheaper with noticeable wrinkles, probably to show that he's still new and budding in this hotel world. With the exception of Gustav's prison uniform, the two dress very much alike for the entire movie. This puts a further visual emphasis on showing that Zero is Gustav's apprentice, and why it makes sense that Gustav would pick Zero as his successor later on. After Gustav gets arrested, he wears a striped prison uniform. Prison stripes in America originated in the 1820s and were designed to make prisoners immediately recognizable as criminals, to further degrade them as they worked in chain gangs, and also to aid in capturing them again when or if they escaped. By the early 1900s, prison stripes started going out of style because society deemed them as being unnecessarily disgraceful. Of course, the Grand Budapest takes place in Europe, which has a slightly different history than the US with striped uniforms. They were never as widely used as they were in the US. Still though, we can trace back to medieval times, and stripes were always considered to be this kind of unnatural pattern. One academic theory posits that there was an inaccurate translation that went around from the Old Testament, which originally said not to mix two kinds of things, like such as wool and linen in the same fabric. I don't know why, I've never read the Old Testament, but this is apparently a thing. An inaccurate translation changed the meaning to two colors versus two kinds of things. And then in the 13th century, Pope Boniface VIII he actually forbid all clergymen from wearing stripes, and around the same time in Saxony, or modern-day Germany, laws enforced sex workers and criminals to wear stripes. Despite their outdatedness, prison stripes have been used often as a kitschy comedic device, such as in cartoons and in movies like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? For that reason alone, I could see why Anderson chose striped uniforms. The prison uniforms are also very drab and dull in color, emphasizing further the struggle that Gustav is facing. Having this and his previous costume be so different demonstrates how great the gap is from where he was to where he is now. Gustav continues to wear drab colors until he returns to the Grand Budapest. The guards and evil characters also wear gray and dark colors to visually distinguish them as enemies compared to the saturated and light colors worn by the heroes and allies. The vibrancy of the color palette is, of course, very trademark Wes Anderson, but it objectively works in this movie because the movie mostly takes place as a flashback to a more decadent pre-war time period. We also learn later that Gustav and Agatha pass away not too long after the main events of this movie, so it makes sense that Zero would hold fonder memories of this time period, adding to the brightness and saturation as he's recollecting it. Anyway, so this is the end of the video. Let me know if you have any differing interpretations or analyses than mine. I would love to hear them. So yeah, I'll catch you later next time.